Let me welcome you to my friend Debbie Baker, attorney Debbie Baker.
It's okay. You can call me Dr. Deb. I
Good
before we start,
morning.
morning,
Thank
I gotta say, I wonder how long somebody has to rehearse to announce all those disclaimers before a show or whatever and still be understandable.
Yes,
Like
it's called practice.
practice exactly. It's like anyway. Morning, Steve.
Good morning. Hey, we want to wish everybody a happy Memorial Day and tip off our hats to all those people who gave their lives for us. And I want to reiterate, this is a live show today. A lot of people are doing replays today. This is live. And if you have a question for Attorney Baker, we have a chat line on our TV that you can write in your questions today. Debbie, the first thing we've noticed since we've gone to TV is every week we've got new listeners. And just tell people about your practice and yourself.
Okay. Um, well, I'm holding my round to it. Did I have this last month, Steve? My round to it? I don't remember. Anyway, I guess let's see. I went to law school between 2011 and 2015. And so to say, I wasn't 22 years old when I went. And I guess it was one of those round to its. I finally got around to it after having thought about it several times. Um, so I've been an executive coach my whole life. I've been telling people how to lead their lives since I was 5. I don't know anybody who knew me when I was 5 who could confirm that, but I would venture to guess that that was the case.
You're a
And I
smart kid.
I love coaching, and God had a different plan for me 50 years after I graduated from high school. So He said go to law school, and I went, and I loved every single second of it. Well, anyway, we don't have time for it, but I didn't love all my courses, but that was because of me, not because of the professors. And I decided on estate planning and probate and this kind of thing because I love to be of service. That was everything that my coaching practice was about. As I tell people, Steve, you could have hired me to work with yourself while you were choosing, do you keep doing this or you do something else or whatever? Or you could have called and said, Deb, I have a team of 20 and we're not communicating. Can you help me? So the one about helping you decide to stay or not would be a lunch somewhere or coffee or who knows what, if it was a one-time conversation. And the other would be a consulting contract. Didn't matter as long as I could be of service. So estate planning is just a great way to be of service. Like you said, people should do it. They don't get around to it. They think they're going to do it. It gets to the bottom of the pile. And then oftentimes what happens is a tragedy happens in their family or a friend's family. And they say, oh my gosh,
Yes.
this will not happen to me. And I've got a couple of clients like that right now. It's like, oh my gosh, this will not happen to me. So it's a great way to be of service. There was a lot of coaching involved. I'm looking at bringing elder law into my practice because it seemed I'm beginning to understand really how important that is. It's asset protection, Medicaid planning, but right now estate planning, probate, wills, trusts, that kind of thing keeps me busy.
It's ever since you've joined our show, I think about you hear some of these young people passing away, and some of them are, athletes, professional football players, and we never know what God has in store for us. And planning is so important. I love what you do. You are a people person. You're an educator. I love what you do, and that's what this show is about. You will be teaching people probably many things they didn't even know about. And one of the first things we're going to talk about today is the story of the green box. I cannot wait to hear this.
Steve, how believe it or not, things happen and the timing is like perfect. And I hadn't had that expression actually until last Friday, I think Thursday or Friday, when I was speaking to a woman I just met. And she was trying to figure out what I did so she could tell other people. And she said, "You help people fill their green box." And I went, "Okay, what's a green box?" And she had told me she'd been somewhere and she heard a speaker talk about being ready when you pass so that your family just has to open a box and follow directions. So I do help people build their green box. And it's the idea that when you get hurt or incapacitated, or when you die, the last thing anybody in your family wants to do is start digging for information, having to find information, whatever that may, define that however you will. And what this woman said her grandfather did, uh, was he found a green box. I haven't found mine yet. I have to find the perfect size. But in it, you would put and update it every year, which I thought was really brilliant. So you would find something that held your estate documents, your will, your trust if you had one, life insurance policies, information about your financial investor, who to call, so that you collect your beneficiary designations from whoever has named you as where you've been named as a beneficiary. But also in and there's other things, but those would be like the main things. The other things you would have in that green box would be your healthcare surrogate, if so somebody knew, and your living will, so somebody knew if you got incapacitated, you were ill, and your power of attorney, so somebody would know if for some reason you hadn't informed somebody that they held these positions. So any essential document to move your family more peacefully, I'm not sure that's the right word, but more calmly through a process that's hard at any time, would be a gift beyond measure. And this woman was telling me that her grandfather did it, her father did it, and he updates it every year. So the idea of updating every year is, let's just say you and Sophia had investments in XYZ stock, let's just say, but you liquidated that and invested in ABC stock. You needed to get your XYZ stock information out of your green box so that if somebody found it, they were now only calling somebody about your ABC stock. Anything like that. You weren't taking required minimum distributions last year, 2 years ago, but you did last year. That information needs to go in the box. And I can appreciate how that would be invisible to the person who was doing it, because you just did it and you got the money and you didn't think about it. But if somebody in your family needs to know, they need to know. And for me, I just put together I'm going to make it a green box, but I just put together a file for my husband, being the shoemaker with holes in their shoes, where he now has the phone numbers of who to call if something happens to me, like if I pass, and he's got the bank accounts and he's got this and that, and he's put in a folder. Now, he may not be able to find it when he needs it, but that's about him, not about the
So that was my next question. How do people know where that green box is?
You have to tell them. It has to be in a reasonably conspicuous place, whether that's a lockbox or a home safe or even just a file folder that's a different color somewhere that's labeled, green box, or Deb's essential information or something like that, which I labeled mine, so that somebody can come in and find it. But the idea of it, when I spoke to this woman last week, was, oh my gosh, this has to be part of my conversation with Steve, because until actually I pulled everything together over the last couple of weeks for my husband, he would, in fairness to him, it would have been nothing about him that he couldn't find it. He really, because it was scattered all over. Instead of being in one place with last year's statements from all these different places, each one of them had their own file. He wouldn't have known. And that's not about him. That's about, I don't know where to look. I don't know where to look. So I'm going to do one for me, and he's got one for him, but I'm going to see about how do I create a green box, and I will be introducing it every time I speak from now on, that idea of the green box.
Debbie, I got to tell you, that is the greatest idea. We're in 8 other cities. We have other estate planning attorneys as our experts. You were the first person to bring that out. I mean, because I'm sitting here imagining, if someone passes, especially if people didn't know that they would be passing away sooner than later,
Right.
that there's a green box there
Yeah.
and everything is there. That is such a great idea.
Well, I'm gonna thank the person who gave me the idea, and then I'm gonna have to tell her to thank the person who gave her the idea. And but and yeah, it's a wonderful idea, and I guess part of what I liked about it is it was the instant image of a green box. She could have said, it was the idea of something physical. So she could have said a red box, but it was the idea of something. So now all I need to do is find a box that's like 8.5, that holds an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. Doesn't have to be deep, like a shirt gift box or something, just with that specific label. So yeah, thank you. And I'll thank her.
Yeah, 'cause I think about, again, and we've talked about this on the show before. I think about Prince not even having a will. Can you imagine what his family had to go through? I mean, what he left the family, I mean, God rest his soul, but still, I mean, there was nothing close to a green box with Prince.
Well, the tragedy with somebody like that, and it doesn't matter about the dollars, is um, lawyers make a lot of money in situations like that. And I'm not saying they don't earn it, but with the green box, there's either no need for an attorney or there's little need for an attorney because somebody's done it right and laid it out. And then somebody has to execute. And I don't know about other states, but I know in Florida, and this may be national because it has a lot to do with banks. I've had people call where somebody's died and they say, "What do I do?" I said, "Well, right now you grieve." "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Here's the thing. If you've got assets that are not beneficiary designated, like in a bank or whatever, that money is safe probably for at least, in most cases, for at least 2 years. So, and at least a year. You don't have to do anything right now. Not right now. Give yourself some time, give me." And I've got a couple of people now who I've said, "Listen, you're close enough to the 2 year mark. You might as well," because what happens in those, if a creditor, so if I have a credit card debt, which actually my husband would have no responsibility for, but they can make a claim against my estate, and I have cash assets, which aren't beneficiary designated, and that person files a claim within the first 2 years, they can get access to that money. Wait 2 years, those claims are barred, at least in Florida. So I've told people who are close, and we're talking about, both cases, one case $12,000, one case like $5,000. I said, do not pay me money to have somebody come along and get that money. I mean, that's crazy. Let's wait 2 years. Nobody claims. At least you'll get it all versus only 60% of it. So, but when somebody passes, the first thing to do is grieve. Then if you have to call an attorney who tells you go grieve, call me back in a month, call me back in 2 months, just breathe, you're okay. There's nothing you have to do right now. In case where that wasn't necessarily true, but for the like 99.44 Ivory Snow Pure. Who knows about Ivory Snow anymore, Steve? Anyway, Ivory Snow Pure. There's nothing to be done right away. But the green box would help because they would know that. Like, oh, okay.
I just want to add this, that many people think estate planning, I have to have, millions of dollars. That's not true, is it?
No, no, no.
That word estate,
Yeah, right. No, any money in the bank that you don't have a name on for somebody to get it when you die, that's an estate. And I've had people recently say, "Well, it's only $300, $400." No, I'm not saying it's a lot of money. I'm saying that if you don't put somebody on that account to get it, that money could very easily be lost, because why would somebody pay $1,000, $1,500, whatever an estate planning attorney would charge to probate that estate when you're not going to even get your money back? So you want somebody to have access to that money, however little or much it is, and you never know. Because right now, let's say I've got a number of estates where they're waiting to finish, but there's a home involved. Well, especially in Florida, maybe not in the Northeast in the winter. Well, even in the Northeast in the wintertime, you got to leave the water on because you don't want the pipes to freeze. Here, you don't want the house to mold in
Yeah.
Florida, right?
We don't have
So,
too many freezing problems here, do we?
right. So you got to keep the power on. You got to keep the power on. Well, if you have $300 or $400 in an account that somebody can get access to, that might cover your power bill for a couple of months if it's a small home and you're running AC at like 85 degrees, but enough to keep the mildew out. So people, and people go, "Oh, I never knew." I said, "No, and there's no reason for you to know. No, there's not, but it's just." So they'll go off and they'll beneficiary designate. And I've gotten adamant about second level beneficiaries. So do you have children, Steve? Steve, do you have children?
Oh, I guess I did. Well,
Oh,
they're adults now.
okay, they're
I'm not
adults, right?
used to
So
hearing the word children.
okay, so they're adults. So
Yes.
a lot of times people will name their adult children, whether that's an 18-year-old or a 48-year-old. They'll name their adult children as their beneficiaries. But what I've started to say is you want to do the next layer down. So let's just say you have the 48-year-old as your beneficiary, but you have adult grandchildren, and that's where you'd want the money to go. I said, go name them secondary, because God forbid your child predeceases you, it may not occur to you in your grief that you now have an asset that doesn't have anybody to which it passes. And people say, "Oh, I never thought of that." I say, again, there's no reason for you to think about that. And in a state of grief, there's no reason it would occur to you. And if you have it in place, the likelihood of your grandchildren predeceasing you is minuscule. It's not much larger for your child. But if you have it in place, you've got it going somewhere, and nobody's going to run into a probate situation, which even in probate friendly states, of which Florida is not, like, why bother? If you can, it's like
Probate
decaffeinated
is
coffee.
expensive too.
So anyway, but yeah,
Let me ask you, what happens if a person does not plan for the possibility of becoming incapacitated?
so when people, let's say incapacitated, so physically incapacitated, oftentimes people need people to take care of things for them. They can no longer go to a bank. They can no longer run errands for themselves. I have a friend like that up in North Carolina. You need a power of attorney for that, so people can go to your bank and anybody can make a deposit, but can write a check or make a withdrawal or whatever. You need a power of attorney. Incapacitated, you need to have somebody who's going to make healthcare decisions for you. And I was speaking to a friend last week, because generally speaking, if you have a spouse, your spouse can speak for you in terms of healthcare decisions. If you have a partner, significant other, whatever you want to call it, you're single, unless you designate somebody, they can't talk to a doctor, they can't make a healthcare decision for you. They're not allowed by law. Well, you don't want to be in that situation. I mean, I have all my healthcare surrogates, if people are willing, go into effect immediately, because as long as you have mental capacity, if somebody comes along and says, "Well, we're going to do this for Steve," and you go, "Excuse me, hello, I don't have a right." But if you're in a situation where a decision needs to be made and you're in a coma, or that medically induced or whatever, somebody needs to make a decision. Last thing you want is them looking around for who they can legally appoint. So that's physical capacity. Mental capacity is a whole other thing. So with a power of attorney, durable power of attorney, and this is probably true in all states, but in Florida, the power of attorney stays in effect if you become incapacitated, with a couple of exceptions. So if somebody had been admitted to a mental hospital or suicidal ideation. I love that word. For suicidal, for thinking about taking their own life. They haven't been declared incompetent, but they may not have capacity in those moments to make a decision. So they need somebody with a healthcare surrogate and a power of attorney to stand for them, to be an advocate for them.
I'm thinking
And
about Terry Shively now.
Terry Shivo, who's always the perfect example, sad, perfect example. But people who don't have it in the Terry Shivo situation, where she was in what they call a persistent vegetative state, at least according to her husband, that in my opinion, I don't know, but my opinion is, had he had a document, had she signed a document to the effect that she did not want to live like that, her family probably could have sued anyway. Probably could have sued. However, I doubt that it would have gone for, because he had the document. And, nobody knows the situation except
Right.
him and the parents. But that couldn't have been easy for him. I mean, 30 years old, whatever it was that caused the situation, couldn't be easy for him. And then he's got this. He's a young man. He's got a young wife who's in this horrible situation where there doesn't seem to be an end. None of those decisions are easy. For people who are readers, a wonderful book is Medicine in the 11th Hour. I don't have it here. Written by a woman who's a physician, and she went into palliative care. It was the only specialty in the world of Western medicine, so to speak, that she could find where she felt she could really be of service, because she kept having one person after another show up in an emergency room. End-stage cancer, stroke, whatever, no directives for their family, and the family arguing about, no, we should keep mom alive. No, we should let her go. No, we should do surgery. No, we shouldn't do surgery. No directives. And she went into palliative care because it's all about end of life, honoring people's choices, and her being in a position to help families come to understand that they needed to think of what their parent wanted and do everything they could to honor that. This is what I tell people. You appoint people who will honor your wishes. They don't have to agree with them.
That makes sense.
So it's a really great area to practice, because people think, and then they can come to a choice which they could change, but they get a place to start. And any plan is better than no plan, because the state, whatever state, commonwealth you live in, has a plan for you, which is called intestacy. And that just means that people you never wanted. Oh, thank you for posting that title. People who would have never wanted something have their family arguing about something, and whoever died didn't want those people to have anything to do with them. So it's a fun place to be. It's very heartwarming. It's heartbreaking when you hear some of the stories, but God knew what he was doing when he sent me to law school. So, I have another 24 anniversaries of my 39th birthday. So I got another 24 years.
We talk about this. I'm going to change the subject for just a second. We talk about how people change. Now, we're on TV right now, and I am looking at one of the cutest cats you could possibly imagine. And I was never a cat person, ever, 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 until my girlfriend had not one, but two cats. And I fell in love with cats all my life. I mean, so things change. But so I just want to tell you, if you're watching on TV, you can see it is the cutest cat, and people change. And that's why with estate planning, you should go in every year, because things change.
And people lose sight. They have children and forget they haven't included them. They get an inheritance. They need to know. They win the lottery. I mean, or something. I mean, and then stuff happens, but the inheritance, people probably get an inheritance, not often, but frequently, that they've had no idea that they're getting.
Did you see what our great producer put on that good night?
Yeah,
That,
yeah, no, I
that,
really appreciate it. Yeah,
the
yeah.
11th, yes.
It's a wonderful book. It's a wonderful book. Um, yeah. So and it's her story. And she
We've got
learned
a,
that she didn't have any idea what her parents wanted to do when they died.
yes. You know, it's amazing. This show goes by so fast. I have so many questions, which we'll have to do next month. Just so you know, Attorney Baker is with us the last Monday of each month. So it's really easy to keep up with her shows. And if you're watching on TV, we have been scrolling her phone number throughout the show. But if you're listening on radio, or if you're going to be listening to the podcast, her phone number is 813-586-1, the number one, Deb, 813-586-1332. And it is London Baker Law. Last question to end the show.
Yeah.
Why should I retain you as my attorney?
Oh
Because
my gosh,
when you
that's a
do,
great question,
I
because
mean,
I make this
girl,
whole thing fun. Um I am informal. I mean, you can tell by my surroundings. What people can't see it, but trust me, I'm informal. I'm informal. Um, I do make it fun. I'm very compassionate. I can hear the angst in people's stories and the hard choices they have to make. Um, if I can't handle your situation, I'll find somebody who can. But I don't know another estate planning attorney who will tell you that they make it fun, or probate. I mean, if I'm not going to have fun, I really don't want any part of it. So if we can't laugh, however um, tragic the situation, and get some lightness into it, then it's not going to work. So that's why I would say you should hire me. I mean,
and you know what else I love about you? Your communication skills. I could just sit here and listen to you. So as a life coach, I could definitely understand that.
well, thank you,
And you're just a good person. We are so blessed to have you as part of the show.
thank you.
Uh, Again, Attorney Baker's phone number is 813-586-1332. Or if you want to remember it, the number one, Deb. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
I can't wait to see you again next month.
See you next month. I want to meet Sophia. She needs to be here one of these days.
I'm going to make sure she is. She's probably
Okay.
watching right now. Thank
Okay.
you so
Thanks,
much.
Steve. All right. Thanks.
That was
Bye.
Attorney Baker.